It is the 1st of October and we already have the chance of a frost tonight. So I wanted to come out to the pumpkin and squash patch and get everything harvested that's mature right now. So I thought I would show you guys how I pick a ripe pumpkin or winter squash and kind of the process of curing and storing them. But first, I want to give you a quick look at all of the different variants that we have going on in this patch. We planted a lot of different varieties this year and it's been really fun to see all the different colors and shapes. So let's take a look. Now, one of the very first indicators you can look for on a lot of winter squash and pumpkins is a color change. So for instance, butternut squash will turn to this typical tan color. I've got one here called Autumn Frost that will go from green to this beige and it will get this frost on it, which tells you that it's ripe. And then you obviously have things like the big orange jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, which will turn deep orange when they're ripe. So that color change will get you close. But to ensure that you're picking your winter squash and pumpkins at their peak maturity, which means that you're going to get a longer term storage life out of them, you want to use this trick. And all this trick takes is a thumbnail. So what you want to do is whatever squash or pumpkin you think is close to maturity, go up on the top, fairly close to where the stem is coming out, and press your thumbnail into the rind. Now, about a medium pressure, you don't have to go super hard, but what you're looking for is that your thumbnail is not able to pierce the rind of your squash or pumpkin. So you can see on this one, that rind is hard. I cannot pierce that with my thumbnail. So I know between this color change, where it's starting to show this tan color, and the thumbnail test that this pumpkin is ready to be picked. So let's contrast that with this squash. These have been colored up for a long time, but when I press on the rind with my thumbnail, I am able to make a indentation. And so after I've given these the thumbnail tests, I will just go through and about halfway up the stem, snip them off with a shears or scissors, heavy duty scissors or something of the like, and I will take these to start the curing process. So let's get harvesting. Once you get all your winter squash harvested, you can set it up to cure. Now, not every type of winter squash needs curing. In particular, acorn squash, spaghetti squash, and delicata squash, which delicata look like these, do not need to be cured. Your other pumpkins and winter squash you'll want to cure, and that's because the curing process helps harden the rind, which will allow them to store longer, and it will help the natural sugars concentrate in the flesh, which improves the taste. Ideally, you will cure winter squash and pumpkins in a warm, dry, sunny, protected area that is 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit and about 80 to 85% humidity. Now, I realize that that's not practical for many home and hobbyist gardeners. If you happen to have a greenhouse, that makes a great place to cure winter squash. Otherwise, sitting in like a sunroom, on a sun porch, in a sunny south-facing window. If you don't have a sunny window, even just like a warm, dry, protected porch will work. Just the closest you can to a warm, dry, fairly humid environment. And ideally, most squash will cure for about 10 to 14 days. Some a little bit longer. Butternuts you can cure up to a month, but you will go through that curing process before putting them away for long-term storage. So I'm going to put all these squash in the greenhouse, and we're going to fast forward to putting them into long-term storage. Awesome. Now, one thing I did forget to mention, if there's any dirt on them, you want to brush them off. Kind of clean them off a little, but you don't want to spray them off with water because you don't want to add any extra moisture. The other thing is, if you have Squash with obvious cuts or nicks or animals have chewed on them, you're going to want to use those first because they will start to rot in long-term storage. Once your squash have been properly cured, it's time to move them into long-term storage. Now, the ideal storage conditions are about 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit and anywhere from 50 to 70% humidity. Now, don't agonize about hitting those targets exactly. I found as long as you keep the squash coolish and dryish in an area with decent air circulation, they store just fine. Now, the length of storage is going to depend on the variety of winter squash or pumpkin that you're growing. So I'll throw a chart up that will show you all of the different storage times for the different types of squash and pumpkins. But just realize that when you are growing different varieties, some will store for as little as 3 months, some will store up to and over sometimes a year if properly cured and stored. And be sure to let me know if you have any additional tips or tricks for curing and storing winter squash and pumpkins. And drop a line in the comments below and let me know what your favorite pumpkin or squash variety is to grow. I am always on the lookout for new varieties to try. And if you find content like this helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel, Grow Fully with Jenna. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.